The day they gathered to celebrate his mistress's pregnancy was the day my world shattered. Over 30 family members laughed and toasted, oblivious to the storm brewing in my heart. Hours later, as they feasted on cake and joy, I was quietly packing my bags, ready to leave behind a life I once cherished. I had one last surprise in store, a truth so explosive it would shatter their perfect illusion. At 8 p.m., I stood at the doorway, the weight of betrayal on my shoulders, and revealed everything in a single breath. My name is Jackson. They thought they knew love. They had no idea. The room fell into a stunned silence, a heavy blanket of disbelief settling over the celebration. My father's face drained of color, his fork clattering against the plate as he looked at me, the mask of joy cracking beneath the weight of my revelation. My mother, caught between the thrill of new beginnings and the turmoil of her present reality, had frozen mid-laugh, her eyes darting from Thomas to me. I could see the gears turning in her mind, the desperate attempt to reconcile the betrayal she had been unwilling to fully acknowledge. And then there was Elise, who stood with her hands resting protectively over her stomach, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and uncertainty, as though she hadn't anticipated the fallout of her own choice. "Jackson, what are you talking about?" Thomas finally managed to stammer, his voice thick with confusion and disbelief. I could see the denial flickering behind his eyes, but I no longer had the energy to soften my words. The anger that had simmered inside me was now boiling over, demanding to be heard, to be acknowledged. "You know exactly what I mean. You've turned our family into a joke, and this celebration is a mockery of everything we once stood for." The pain in my voice echoed through the room, a raw testament to the emotional chaos that had become my life. Linda took a step forward, her hands trembling as she glanced between Thomas and me. "Jackson, please, let's talk about this calmly," she pleaded, her voice faltering. "This is a time for happiness. We can work through it." But I could see the cracks in her facade. The forced smile she wore was beginning to slip, revealing the turmoil that lay just beneath the surface. "Happy? You think I can be happy knowing that my father is celebrating a child with someone who isn't my mother? You think this is normal?" My heart raced, the words pouring out like a dam bursting, the weight of unspoken truths finally released. The air in the room felt heavy, each breath thick with tension. Mark's loyal presence in the corner of my mind pushed me forward, his steadfast support fueling my resolve. I imagined him standing by my side, his unwavering belief in my strength, and it was enough to give me the courage to face the truth of what had happened. "This isn't just about you, Dad. You're not the only one affected by your choices. I'm standing here, feeling like the one who's been erased from my own family. My feelings don't matter to you, do they?" Elise shifted uncomfortably, her gaze dropping to the floor as I turned my focus to her. "And you, Elise, you're just as complicit in this betrayal. Do you think this child is a solution to your happiness? You're welcoming a life into a world built on deception." My words cut like knives, but I didn't care. I needed them to feel the weight of their actions, to understand the pain they had inflicted upon me. Thomas stepped closer, his face contorting with frustration. "You don't understand what it's like, Jackson." I cut him off, shaking my head in disbelief. "No, Dad, you don't understand what it's like for me. You have no idea what I've gone through watching you tear our family apart. You made your choices, and now you want me to just accept them?" The anguish in my voice echoed against the walls, bouncing back the unresolved tension that filled the space around us. Linda's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she took a deep breath, steeling herself. "We're still a family, Jackson. We can find a way to make this work." I wanted to scream, to tell her that this wasn't a family anymore, that the fabric of our lives had been irrevocably torn apart. I felt like a stranger in my own home, a spectator to a play that had turned tragic in an instant. "Mom, this isn't working. This isn't the way families function. You deserve better than this, and so do I." In that moment, I could see my mother grappling with the realization that the life she had fought so hard to preserve was unraveling before her eyes. It was a painful awakening, and I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but I couldn't afford to soften my stance. I had to be strong, not just for myself, but for the child Elise was carrying, who deserved more than the chaos that surrounded them. The air was thick with unspoken words, and the silence hung heavy like a storm cloud about to break. The chaos of emotion swirled around us, each of us trapped in our own version of this dark reality. I could see the flicker of uncertainty in Thomas's eyes as he struggled to maintain his composure, his world crumbling under the weight of my honesty. But this wasn't just about him, it was about everyone in that room, including me. "Do you even care about the consequences of your actions?" I directed my question at both Thomas and Elise. "Because it feels like you've both decided to rewrite the rules without considering how it impacts everyone else. My childhood is slipping away, and all you can think about is your new beginning." I was shaking now, the intensity of the emotions fueling my anger and hurt. Linda finally spoke, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. "Jackson, we need to take a step back and think this through. We can't just let this tear us apart." But it was too late for that. The foundation of our family had been compromised, and I felt like a fragile piece of glass on the verge of shattering. I needed to draw a line, to carve out a space for my own truth amidst the wreckage. I'm not backing down, not anymore. I refuse to pretend that everything is okay when it's clearly not, I asserted, feeling a mixture of relief and fear at finally voicing my true feelings. I will not let this define me or dictate my future. I deserve better, and so does everyone else here. My words hung in the air, a challenge to each of them. And as I looked around at the faces of my family, my fractured family, I realized that I was finally ready to step into the unknown, ready to forge my own path away from the chaos and hurt. The tension in the room was palpable, a thick fog of unspoken feelings and buried resentments. I stood there, heart racing, as my father's eyes darted between mine and those of my mother, who looked like she was trying to hold back a fly of tears. It was as if time had frozen, the weight of my revelation hanging above us, binding us in a shared silence that was both suffocating and liberating. I could see the flicker of uncertainty in my father's gaze. The man who had always exuded confidence and authority now appeared small and vulnerable. "Jackson," he finally spoke, his voice trembling slightly, "we need to talk about this." His tone was more pleading than commanding, and it struck me that he was not the only one who needed this conversation. I was just as desperate to untangle the knots that had tied us all together in this bizarre celebration of betrayal. I took a deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs with the courage I desperately needed. "Talk?" I echoed, my voice steadying as I felt the warmth of my friend Mark's presence behind me, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone in this moment. "What is there to talk about? You made your choices, and now I'm supposed to just sit back and watch you celebrate a life that shouldn't exist?" Anger bubbled up within me, but it was mixed with a profound sense of sorrow for what we were losing. My family was unraveling, and all that was left was a void filled with heartbreak. Linda's hands trembled as she clutched her purse tightly, her face a mask of grief. "Jackson, please understand," she started, her voice cracking. "Your father made a mistake, but this child—" "That child is a symbol of his betrayal," I interrupted, shaking my head in disbelief. "You want me to accept that this is how it has to be? That our lives are now intertwined with the woman who took my father away from us?" I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, the intensity of my emotions swirling into a storm that threatened to drown me. "I never wanted this," Thomas interjected, his voice low and strained. "I thought I could keep both worlds separate, but I see now how foolish that was. I regret everything, Jackson. I never wanted to hurt you or your mother." His words seemed rehearsed, A desperate attempt to bridge the chasm his actions had created, and yet I could feel the anger still bubbling beneath my skin. "Regret doesn't change the facts," I shot back, my heart racing. "You are going to be a father again, but this time it's not to me. You made a choice, and we are all suffering because of it." I glanced at my mother, her eyes shining with unshed tears, and my heart twisted in sympathy for her. She had fought so hard to hold our family together, and now her strength seemed to be failing her. "I'm trying to keep things stable for you both," she said softly, her voice steady despite her obvious pain. "We can figure this out, Jackson. Families can be complicated, but that doesn't mean we can't learn to love each other in new ways." Her words were gentle, but I felt a surge of frustration rise in response. "Learn to love?" I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing in the awkward silence. "What am I supposed to do? Pretend that everything is okay while watching you both celebrate a life that feels like a knife in my back?" I took a step back, needing space from the whirlwind of emotions that surrounded us. I could see the hurt in my mother's eyes, the reflection of my own turmoil, but I couldn't bear the thought of accepting this new, twisted version of family. Elisa's name hung heavily in the air, unspoken yet omnipresent, and the thought of her waiting for my father made my skin crawl. I couldn't fathom how they could be excited about this new life, knowing it was born from lies. "What about her?" I asked, my voice growing cold. "What about the woman who has made a mockery of everything we built? How can you both embrace the reality of her existence?" Thomas shifted uncomfortably, and for a moment I thought he might defend her. Instead, he remained silent, leaving my mother to take on the burden of explaining the inexplicable. "It's not just about Elise," she said, her eyes searching mine. "It's about the choices we make and how we choose to move forward. We can't change the past, but we can try to make the future better." My heart ached for her unwavering hope, yet I felt trapped in a nightmare from which I couldn't awake. "You're asking me to accept a family I never wanted," I said quietly, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "What if I don't want to? What if I want to walk away from all of this?" Mark stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to accept anything you're not ready for, Jackson. You're allowed to feel what you feel. You're not alone in this." His words were like a lifeline, a reminder that I had someone who believed in me amid this chaos. As I looked back at my parents, the realization struck me that I could redefine my own family. I didn't have to follow their path of acceptance. Instead, I could carve out my own understanding of love and loyalty, one that didn't include betrayal and hurt. "Maybe it's time I started putting myself first," I murmured, a spark of determination igniting in me. The road ahead would not be easy, but I had the power to shape my own narrative. I could no longer be a passive observer in my life. I needed to take control, to seek my own happiness, even if it meant walking away from the people I once called family. With that realization, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. The echoes of the past might haunt me, but they would not define my future. As I prepared to step away from this fractured gathering, I knew I was ready to carve a new path for myself. It was time to reclaim my story and find the family I deserved, one that would embrace honesty and authenticity. If you're following along with my journey and want to see where it leads, consider subscribing to stay updated on my unfolding story. Together, we can explore the complexities of love, betrayal, and the resilience of the human spirit. As I stood at the threshold of my family's home, the cacophony of laughter and cheerful chatter from within felt like a cruel mockery of my pain. I hesitated, breathing deeply, trying to quell the storm of emotions raging inside me. The day was meant to be a celebration, the kind that one would imagine filled with love and warmth, yet all I could feel was the sharp edge of betrayal slicing through every joyous sound. I pushed the door open, stepping into the living room where my family had gathered, blissfully unaware of the turmoil simmering just beneath the surface. My father, Thomas, stood at the center of it all, animatedly discussing future plans with Elise, his mistress. The sight of him, so carefree and oblivious, ignited a fire within me. I glanced around the room, catching Linda's eyes. My mother wore a forced smile, her eyes betraying a flicker of uncertainty. My father, Thomas, stood at the center of it all, animatedly discussing future plans with Elise, his mistress. The sight of him, so carefree and oblivious, ignited a fire within me. I glanced around the room, catching Linda's eyes. My mother wore a forced smile, her eyes betraying a flicker of uncertainty. It was a look I had seen too often over the past few months, a silent plea for understanding amid the chaos that had invaded our lives. I knew I had to act. I could no longer allow this charade to continue. "Can we talk?" I said, my voice steady but low, as I made my way toward my father. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. I felt the weight of their gazes, a mix of curiosity and concern. Thomas turned to face me, his expression shifting from surprise to something resembling annoyance. "Not now, Jackson. Can't you see we're busy?" he replied, brushing me off like a mere inconvenience. I took a deep breath, rallying my courage. "No, Dad, we need to talk now. This isn't just about you anymore." There it was, a spark of defiance that I had buried for too long, rising to the surface. The room felt tense, like the moment before a storm, and I could see Linda's eyes widen in alarm as she sensed the confrontation brewing. "Jackson, please," she interjected softly, but I shook my head. This was a moment I couldn't let slip away. "You've been celebrating this pregnancy like it's the greatest news in the world, but what about us? What about the family you're tearing apart?" His face flushed, and I could sense the tension building within him. "This is my life too, Jackson. You don't understand the complexities of adult relationships," he snapped, trying to regain control of the narrative. But I wouldn't let him steer this discussion away from the truth. "Complexities? Is that what you call betrayal? Because all I see is a father who chose to abandon his family for someone else." My voice rose, fueled by a blend of hurt and anger that I could no longer contain. I could see the shame flicker in his eyes, but rather than back down, I pressed on. "You're celebrating a child that you're bringing into this world without considering the consequences for the one you already have." Elise shifted uncomfortably, her expression a mix of guilt and defensiveness. I could see the hurt in her eyes as she too began to realize the impact of this moment. "Jackson, I never meant to hurt you," she said softly, but her words felt hollow. They were the same empty promises I had heard before. "Then why does it feel like my heart is breaking right now?" I demanded, tears threatening to spill over. "Why does it feel like I'm losing everything?" Linda stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Jackson, we're all struggling to make sense of this. Your father made mistakes, but we can still find a way to heal." The desperation in her tone tugged at my heartstrings, but I couldn't let compassion cloud my need for honesty. "You're trying to make excuses for him, but there's no excuse for what he's done," I shot back, shaking my head. "This isn't healing, it's denial. We can't just pretend everything is fine while he starts a new life with Elise." The tension in the room was palpable, every breath a reminder of the fractures in our family. Mark, my loyal friend, stood by the doorway, his presence a silent support. I caught his eye, and for a brief moment, I found solace in his unwavering friendship. He knew how hard I had fought to keep the pieces of my life from shattering completely. "Jackson, maybe we can sit down and talk about this as a family," Thomas finally said, his tone less aggressive but still defensive. It was a weak attempt to regain some control, but I wasn't going to let him dictate the terms anymore. "I don't want to talk about it," I declared, my voice echoing in the silence that followed. "I want to feel. I want you all to understand how deeply this hurts." My heart pounded as I poured out my truth. "You celebrate a new child while I feel like I'm losing my father, my home, my sense of belonging. You act like everything is normal when nothing will ever be the same again." My words hung in the air, heavy and raw. For the first time, I saw the reality of our situation reflected in their eyes, a mixture of guilt, regret, and the painful recognition of the path we had all walked down. I had finally broken through the facade, and with every breath, I felt a little lighter, a little more free. As silence enveloped us, I realized I wasn't just confronting my father, I was challenging the very foundation of our family. I refused to accept a future dictated by lies and betrayal. The road ahead would be difficult, but I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. A life built on honesty, even if that meant facing the harsh truths that had been buried for too long. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with unresolved tension as I stood there, waiting for my father's response. His eyes darted away from mine, searching for an escape route through the chaos we had created. I could sense Linda behind me, her presence a mix of worry and silent support, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. It was time for the masks to come off, time for the ugly truth to surface, and I was determined to pull them all into the light. "Jackson, I didn't mean for you to find out this way," Thomas finally said, his voice low and defensive. There was no apology in his tone, just an attempt to brush aside the gravity of the situation. I could feel anger bubbling up inside me, pushing against the walls of my composure. This wasn't just about me, it was about everything he had taken from our family, the trust, the love, the sense of security that had been shattered. "You didn't mean for me to find out?" I shot back, incredulity lacing my words. "You think it would have been better to keep this a secret? To pretend everything was fine while you and Elise were planning for a future that excludes us?" The reality of it all twisted like a knife in my gut. How could he be so blind to the pain he was causing? I glanced at Linda, hoping to find reassurance in her eyes, but she looked as lost as I felt, trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. "Let's just talk about this calmly," Thomas said, his hands raising as if to ward off the conversation. "We can figure something out." I shook my head, disgust simmering beneath the surface. "You think this can be fixed with a calm conversation? You're bringing another child into this mess, Dad. Another child who will never have a true family because you decided to prioritize your desires over your responsibilities." Each word was laced with pain, not just for me, but for Linda as well. She deserved more than the hollow words he offered. "Jackson, please," she whispered, stepping forward, her voice trembling. I could see the anguish etched on her face, and it only fueled my resolve. I knew she wanted to maintain peace, but I couldn't allow that to come at the expense of our truth. "No, Mom, this is the moment we need to face. I'm tired of pretending that everything's fine. We can't just smile and celebrate Elisa's child like it's some normal family gathering when the very foundation of our family is crumbling," I said, feeling the weight of my words pressing down on me. Thomas opened his mouth to respond, but I wasn't finished. "This isn't just about you and Elise, Dad. It's about us, the family you've chosen to abandon. I need to know why you think this is okay, and I deserve more than just excuses." His silence hung in the air, a testament to the weight of his guilt. I watched as he swallowed hard, the flicker of shame in his eyes giving me a glimmer of hope. Maybe I could reach him. Maybe he would finally understand the depth of his betrayal. Linda stepped closer to me, her hand resting on my shoulder, grounding me. "Jackson, sweetie," she began gently, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want you to carry this burden alone. We will find a way to navigate this together." I nodded, appreciative of her strength. "We have to be honest with each other, Mom. We can't hide from this. If we're going to rebuild what's left of our family, it has to start here." For the first time, I saw a flicker of realization cross Thomas's face. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Jackson. I got lost in my own mistakes and never thought about how it would affect the people I love the most." His admission was raw, but it felt like a small victory amidst the storm. "Then show me you mean that," I challenged, feeling a rush of emotion as I spoke. We need to break down these walls, to stop pretending everything is okay. You have a chance to be better, to be the father I need you to be. His face hardened slightly, but I could see the turmoil within him. What do you want me to do? Start by being honest. Talk to Mom, talk to me, and stop running away on your responsibilities. You chose to create this mess, and it's time to own up to it. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over me, as if I had released some of the weight that had been pressing on my heart. "Jackson," he began again, this time more gently, "I want to make things right. I don't want to lose you." "Then fight for it," I urged, my voice steady. "Show me that you care about fixing this." Mark's presence was a comforting reminder of my support network, a silent strength I could lean on. I imagined him waiting outside, ready to help me process this turmoil once it was over. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had a chance to reclaim my life, to redefine what family meant to me. As the conversation began to open up further, I felt Linda's hand squeeze my shoulder tighter, and in that moment, I knew I wasn't alone. I had taken a monumental step toward truth, and no matter how difficult it was going to be, I was ready to confront whatever lay ahead. My heart raced with the possibility of healing, of forging a new path, and perhaps, just perhaps, finding a way back to each other, stronger than before. As I looked into my mother's eyes, I could see a reflection of my own turmoil mirrored back at me. The weight of the family's secrets hung heavy in the air. And the tension that had once seemed unbearable transformed into a shared understanding between us. "We need to talk," I whispered, my voice barely rising above the soft sounds of the celebration in the other room. Linda nodded, her expression resolute, and together we stepped away from the crowd, seeking refuge in the quiet of the kitchen. The clinking of glasses and muffled laughter faded as I leaned against the counter, my heart still racing from the confrontation. I wondered if my father felt any guilt as he celebrated the life he was bringing into the world with Elise. The thought churned in my stomach like a cruel twist of fate. I had always believed that family meant loyalty and love, yet here I was, grappling with the reality of my father's betrayal. "What are we going to do, Jackson?" my mother asked, her voice shaky yet filled with determination. I could tell she was trying to hold it together for both of us. Taking a deep breath, I realized that there was no easy answer. "We need to stand together, Mom. We can't let him tear us apart." Her eyes sparkled with unshed tears, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her strength. "I want to confront him again, but this time I want us both to be there. He needs to understand the damage he's caused," I said, my voice growing firmer with each word. The thought of facing Thomas again filled me with dread, but it was a necessary step to reclaiming our family's narrative. Linda reached out to me, placing her hand over mine. "I'll stand by you, Jackson. We can't let fear dictate our actions anymore. He's not the only one who has a voice in this family." Her words resonated with me, igniting a fire within that I hadn't fully realized was there. Together, we strategized, crafting the words we would use to confront my father, ensuring that our message would be clear and unyielding. As we prepared for the inevitable clash, I couldn't help but think of Elise and the child she was carrying. What kind of life awaited that innocent baby? A life intertwined with deception and shattered promises. I wanted to scream at my father for choosing this path, for choosing to forsake us for a fleeting passion. Yet deep down, I knew this wasn't solely about him or Elise. It was about us, about reclaiming our own narrative amidst the chaos. Once our plan was in place, I felt an unsettling mix of anticipation and dread. I couldn't shake the image of my father's face when he realized that his actions had consequences, that the family he once had was worth fighting for. As we stepped back into the living room, I could feel the energy shift. The laughter seemed forced now, the celebration a thin veneer over the truth we were ready to expose. I spotted Thomas standing with Elise, their chemistry apparent as they shared knowing glances. Rage bubbled up inside me, a raw and powerful emotion that I struggled to contain. This was my moment. My mother and I exchanged a glance, and I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my resolve solidify. "Dad," I called out, my voice cutting through the hum of the room. Heads turned, conversations stilled, and I felt all eyes on me. I could see the surprise on Thomas's face, but there was no turning back now. "Jackson," he started, his tone a mix of confusion and caution. "Not now, please." "No, we need to talk now," I insisted, every word laced with a determination I didn't know I possessed. You can't keep pretending everything is fine while you celebrate a life you've brought into this world with someone else. What about Mom? What about us? My heart pounded, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, but I refused to back down. Linda stepped beside me, her presence a pillar of support. "We deserve answers, Thomas. This isn't just about you anymore. We're here too, and our feelings matter." Her voice, though steady, trembled slightly, revealing the hurt she had been holding back. I could see the discomfort on my father's face, and for the first time, I felt a sense of power in our unity. Elise stood beside him, her expression a mix of defiance and uncertainty. I couldn't help but feel pity for her. She was trapped in this web of deceit just as much as my family was. "You don't have to do this, Jackson," she said softly, her voice almost pleading. But my resolve only strengthened. I wasn't backing down now. The room fell into a heavy silence, the only sound being the muffled laughter from outside, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within our small circle. "Dad, we deserve to know why you chose this path. What were you thinking?" I challenged, my voice unwavering. The seconds stretched into an eternity as he processed my words, the truth hanging in the air like a thick fog. Finally, he shifted uncomfortably, words escaping him as he realized there was no easy way out of this. I knew this moment would change everything. The facade was crumbling. And as difficult as it was to confront him, I felt a sense of liberation in demanding accountability for his actions. "Jackson, he began, but I couldn't let him sidestep the truth anymore. I wanted him to feel the weight of his decisions, to understand that his actions reverberated beyond himself. My voice grew louder, fueled by emotion. "You can't just ignore the pain you've caused. We're still your family, and we deserve your honesty. I deserve your honesty." The flicker of uncertainty in his eyes told me he was beginning to grasp the enormity of the moment. I had never seen him so vulnerable, and it was both terrifying and cathartic. Maybe this confrontation would lead to healing, or at least a reckoning that would force him to reconsider his choices. "Please, just tell us the truth," I urged, my heart pounding with hope that this could be the turning point we all so desperately needed. It was time for my father to face the reality of his actions, and for us to reclaim our narrative. In that moment, I realized that family, no matter how fractured, could still find strength in honesty. Share your own stories about facing difficult truths in your family dynamics. How did you navigate those conversations? Let's engage and learn from each other as we explore the complexities of love and betrayal in our lives. As the tension in the room thickened, I felt the weight of my father's gaze lingering on me, a mixture of guilt and defiance swirling in his eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm within. "You think we can just pretend everything is fine?" I said, my voice steady, despite the turmoil beneath the surface. "You're about to become a grandfather, while I'm left to pick up the pieces of this mess." My mother, Linda, stood quietly at my side, her face drawn, as if she was also trying to absorb the reality of our situation. The family portrait that had once seemed so perfect now felt like a collage of lies and broken promises, and I was desperate to find a way to make sense of it all. Mark, my friend, had been my rock through this chaos, and I could feel his unwavering support from behind me. He had listened patiently as I vented my frustrations, But now it was my turn to confront the source of my pain. "You need to choose," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Do you want to be a father to your new family, or do you want to be a real father to me?" The silence that followed my words was deafening, punctuated only by the ticking of the clock on the wall, each second a reminder of the time slipping away from us. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, his face reddening as he struggled to respond. I could see the conflict within him, torn between the love for his child with Elise and the responsibilities he had abandoned within our family. "Jackson, I never wanted this to happen," he finally said, his voice low and shaky. But his words felt hollow, an echo of the countless promises he had made before, now overshadowed by his infidelity. "You have to understand, I never meant to hurt you." The sincerity in his tone was overshadowed by the reality that his actions had caused irreparable damage. I turned my gaze to my mother, searching for any hint of understanding in her eyes. Linda had always been my protector, the one who tried to hold our family together even as it splintered. But her expression was a mix of sadness and determination. "Jackson, we need to navigate this together," she said softly, her voice trembling but resolute. "Your father and I made mistakes, but we can still be a family. We just need to find a new way forward." I wanted to believe her, but the image of my father celebrating the impending arrival of Elise's child weighed heavily on my heart. The doorbell rang, breaking the tension in the room. I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me, knowing who it likely was. "I'll get it," I muttered, needing a moment to gather my thoughts before facing whatever was about to unfold next. I opened the door, and there stood Elise, her smile bright and innocent, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. She looked like she belonged in a different world, one untouched by the complications we were grappling with. "Hi, Jackson. Is your dad home?" she chirped, her excitement palpable. "Yeah, he's in the living room," I said, trying to mask my contempt. I stepped aside, letting her enter, but I could feel my heart racing as she walked past me. As she approached my father, a sickening knot formed in my stomach. I wanted to shout, to tell her how wrong this all felt, but instead, I stood frozen, watching this scene unfold. It was surreal to witness my father embrace her, joy etched across his face while I struggled with grief. Linda took a deep breath and stepped forward, her voice cutting through the joy in the room. "Elise, can we talk?" she asked, her tone firm yet calm. The room went silent, the atmosphere shifting as the weight of her words settled. Elise's smile faltered slightly, uncertainty flickering across her features as she turned to face my mother. "Of course," she replied hesitantly, glancing back at Thomas, who appeared equally apprehensive. The three of them moved to the side of the room, leaving me standing there, filled with a mix of anger and confusion. I had expected this moment to be explosive, but instead, it felt like a fragile truce was being formed, with each of them trying to navigate the delicate emotions swirling around us. I could see my mother trying to maintain her composure, fighting to reclaim her dignity, while Elise appeared caught off guard, unsure of how to respond. Mark stepped closer to me, sensing my turmoil. "Are you okay?" he whispered, his voice low. I nodded, but the truth was I felt anything but okay. I was teetering on the edge of a precipice, unsure of whether to leap into the unknown or hold back and cling to what little normalcy remained. I don't know how to deal with this," I confessed, my voice cracking under the weight of my emotions. "You'll find a way," Mark assured me, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you think. You've already confronted your father. That took courage." His words ignited a flicker of determination within me, reminding me that I was not just a passive participant in this drama. I had a voice, and it was time to use it. As the conversation between my mother, father, and Elise continued, I felt my resolve strengthening. I couldn't control what had happened, but I could shape how I reacted to it. I had already taken the first step by confronting my father. Now it was time to reclaim my story, to redefine what family meant to me amidst the tangled web of love and betrayal. I would no longer be a silent observer. I would stand firm in my beliefs and carve out a path that honored my own feelings and experiences. With newfound clarity, I took a step forward, ready to embrace whatever came next.